Welcome to Real Talk, the unedited, scripted, unfiltered show where I sit down with a gaming personality and talk about anything and everything. Legend, a word that gets overused in our scene, but today's guest is the definition of one. Justin Wong has been competing for the past 10 years and has been consistent the entire time. He has the uncanny ability to pick up a fighting game and within moments begin to figure it out before anyone else does. I'm excited to introduce on the show Justin Wong of Team Evil Geniuses. Justin, how are you today?
Pretty good. Thank you for having me on the show. And as you can see from the background that we're still unpacking and stuff, so sorry about the unfiltered background mess and stuff.
Yeah, not a problem, man. We get it, obviously. I do have a question, though. What's up with the feminine shoe back there behind you? What's that going on the ground? I guess you moved it.
I see nothing of that sort.
You trickster. All right, well, let's go ahead and just jump into the show, I guess. I've been a silent fan for a while now of yours and kind of the FGC in general, so I'm really interested to hear your story and also your take on the fighting game scene. But first off, we're going to start with your personal stories. So where were you born and where did you grow up?
I was born and raised in New York City, and I grew up in New York City, so I've been living there for at least 23 to 24 years of my life. Met a lot of cool people and stuff, so it was just definitely an experience to live in New York City.
What did your parents do for work, as you were growing up?
Well, to be honest, for the longest time when I was a child, I didn't know what they did for work. I just know that they came home very late and left very early in the morning. And, I was just stuck on that Fresh Prince of Bel-Air WB TV show every day after school. So one day I realized that my dad, he works at a sushi restaurant as a manager at the time when I was like maybe 7, 8 years old. And my parents are divorced, so I never met my mom. And today my dad works at a casino in like Foxwoods Resorts in Connecticut.
Oh, okay. Okay. Did you have any brothers and sisters growing up?
I do not have any brothers, but I have two stepsisters that I'm pretty close with. So, like growing up, I saw them for like when I was a child, maybe when I was like 10, 11. And there was like that time period where at least 6, 7 years, I did not see them ever again until I was like 19, 20. So it was just definitely interesting because they moved to a different state and then they just moved back to New York. So that's why I was able to see them like now.
Would you say your relationship with them is close, or I mean, what did that kind of distance do? Were you close before they moved, or what's that relationship like?
I was really close with them growing up. When I was young, and then that time period I was like, oh, I don't know what happened, they just kind of disappeared. But when they came back, I didn't think anything of it. I just had open arms. I'm like, hey, what's up, let's go hang out, let's go have dinner and stuff like that.
Gotcha. Well, let's talk about school. What was school like for you growing up, the early years of school, the kindergarten and the 1 through 8th?
During those years were definitely interesting because I really thought, thinking about it now, I was very awkward, socially awkward, very weird. I didn't think I had a lot of friends just because it was very hard to approach people, and I was really on that watch TV thing, and whatever I see on TV, I try to act it in real life, which is kind of funny. So that was like my personality going through school, and I thought I was more popular in high school, I think, just because when I went to the arcade called Chinatown Fair, I made friends there, and just talking to them and like being socially active with them, it made me learn how to talk as an individual and make friends in high school.
Were you kind of a part of any of the sports clubs or any other clubs within school, or were you just kind of the 8 to 3 guy, then get out of there as fast as possible?
I was more the 8 to 3 guy and just went straight to the arcade to just play some Street Fighter and Marvel vs. Capcom 1 and hang out with my friends in the arcade. Those were all my real friends there.
How far did you go in your academic career? Did you kind of stop after high school to pursue the pro gaming career, or?
No. Once I finished high school, I went to college for 2 years.
Okay.
And as I was going to college, I was also traveling tournaments. So it was kind of hard to do both. And I was like, maybe gaming can go bigger. So I just kind of like took a break from college and just went straight into just professional gaming.
Did you kind of, obviously the first 2 years of college are pretty general studies, but did you have a end goal in sight for college? Did you have something that you want to study?
Well, my family kind of forced me to do business administration.
Okay.
It's just typical Asian family, right?
Right.
So it was very boring. I did like introduction to business, business law and stuff like that. And it was just I finished that for like 2 years and it was just not I didn't want to do that at all.
So really, no interest, kind of looking back in terms of going back to college. Really, no interest right now.
I mean, the only interest I probably would want to do is probably maybe like marketing, maybe like in the near future for like a
Okay.
video game company once my hands fall off.
Well, let's talk about your hands falling off, kind of the start of that. When did you first? I mean, you mentioned going to the arcade. Was it a case of playing games at home first, or were you kind of born into video games at the arcade?
Um, well, my grandma never wanted me to go to this arcade Chinatown Fair. Like it was a famous arcade in New York, but
Hmm.
they did not want me to go there because it's like, oh, it's dangerous, it's full of thugs and stuff like that. So for a long time, I didn't go. I kind of just snuck in there, just went in there without them knowing.
Hmm.
But my dad gave me an NES when I was growing up. But the funny part was he got me an NES after SNES came out. So I was like playing. I was like, oh, I got the coolest system in the world, and all these kids playing the SNES. I'm like, damn, I feel kind of left out. I'm playing Super Mario 1 while they're playing Super Mario World. So
Ouch.
yeah, I was playing like those type of games, like the Ninja Turtles 1, like Solomon's Key, like all those impossible games that as a kid you would think that you would not want to play these games at all. And then that's why I just snuck into the arcade because they had so much more easier games. They had like 1942, the airplane shooter. They had
Mm.
all these racing games. They had like Pac-Man and like even Dig Dug and even like the old school Street Fighter Hyper Fighting. So it was definitely more fun playing there.
Did you have, or do you have kind of a favorite game outside of the fighting game scene from that era?
Yeah, so when I was in beginning of high school, me and my Asian friends, we had this rivalry between like the Asian girls and Asian guys. So we always go to the Chinatown Fair, and there was this game in the corner that all these Asian girls always wanted to play, called Magical Drop 2. So they were saying, oh, this is a girls' game, so you can't play this, whatever. So then me and my friends, which were Asian guys, we learned how to play the game, and we got really addicted to it. It's a SNK puzzle game, and it's like the
Oh,
most
okay.
craziest. I think it's the number one puzzle game in the world in terms of like strategy and speed. So that's like my favorite game. Even now, probably that's like my favorite game.
Do you own a copy of it, or maybe even an arcade cabinet of it?
No, I definitely wish, but I have it for the Wii because it came out as the Data East Classics, and they have Magical Drop 3 there.
Uh,
So that I just played that, but there's no online play, so it kind of makes me sad.
well, let's try to make a cap here and talk about some fighting games. What was the first kind of fighting game you were introduced to, and what was that experience like? Kind of learning to use the sticks for the first time in the arcade, and also just playing a fighting game in general.
The first fighting game I ever played was Hyper Fighting, and it was super old. I think it's like the third installment of the Street Fighter 2 series. And to be honest, the joystick wasn't really a problem for me, just because there was no such thing as like real pads besides the NES and the SNES pad or the Sega Genesis pad. So like there was no Xbox or PS3 pad or whatever. So, you always kind of just grow up in the laundromat arcades when you're like a kid, and then, your parents take you to the laundromat. Oh, look, there's a machine there. So I was just playing like shooting games and fighting games ever since probably when I was like 6 or 7. And so I learned how to use a joystick when I was 6 or 7. And I was that kid that played hyper fighting, and I picked M Bison, and I just hold back and press forward and press punch and then do the cycle crush full screen and try to beat people all day. But it didn't really work out when you played someone that knew how to play the game. But against the people that never touched the game before, it works wonders.
Do you think that learning the mechanics of kind of a stick back then sets you apart from a lot of people these days, or is that kind of the general case within the fighting game scene? Is everyone learned kind of back then at that age?
Yeah, I think back in the day, if you were part of if you were part of the fighting games, you would definitely know how to play on joysticks because those fighting games never really came out on console until like the PlayStation 1 and 2 days, if you think about it. So all the games came out as coin ops. So and arcades were pretty popular back in the day in the 90s. So I think everyone that was part of part of that scene always played on on the arcade cabinets because
Right.
even tournaments were part of arcade cabinets.
What was it about fighting games that hooked you at the start of it? Was it the competitive kind of the fact that it was always versus, well, not always, you could play versus the computer, but there was always the chance of someone kind of coming up and challenging you, or what was it that hooked you?
I think it was because all my friends were playing it, so I just got involved. That was the first step. Like that was the reason why I wanted to get better was because I wanted to be on their level or just beat them. And after that, it became more of a competitive thing where, oh, this is pretty fun. So I want to see if I could beat people from different states. And then it became, I want to beat people from different coasts. And then it became, I want to beat different people from around the world.
Mm. So it kind of just different evolutions to use the word uh, in terms of who you wanted to fight and who you wanted to beat. It just kept growing. Your competitive drive kept wanting more and more.
Yeah, pretty much.
Fighting games kind of have this unique aspect to them where if you're playing in the arcade at least, you're automatically competitive. You automatically want to play the best people there. When would you say you really started competing, though, in your eyes?
Um, well, so since at this time I was in high school, and you finish school at 3 p.m. and you go to the arcade, and you can't really stay out that late because you have homework to do for the next day. So there's always that time where okay, me and my friends we always played the three. We were the three to 6 o'clock shift, but no one knows what's after 6 o'clock. So one night, it was like a holiday, and I stayed out past 6 p.m. And there was like the 7 o'clock, the 10 o'clock crowd, and that was the people that just got off work.
Hmm.
And I got my ass beat so hard, and I thought I was good at the time. So after that, they told me that the guy I played like he was like professional in terms of like Marvel's Capcom 1 and like in general in any fighting game at the time. His name was Eddie Lee. He's like the old super old school, right? Probably like the Alex Valle or John Choi of the East Coast, but not a lot of people know about him that much. So after that, it just got me like training harder because it's like, damn, if I could beat him, that means I should be the best in the East Coast. That's what I thought because that's what people are just feeding into my minds. So I think because of that, it just got me more interested in terms of the tournament scene and just how the approach of fighting games in general.
Did you ever end up beating him?
Oh yeah, I ended up beating him after Marvel vs. Capcom 2 came out,
Okay.
but that's kind of when he sort of retired.
Mm.
So I don't know, I feel like I didn't beat him at his prime, but more like I took over the torch for him.
Mm. Mm. Now, kind of when you first started competing, did you have the attitude of I'm the best, or did you find yourself to be more humble going to these events?
To be honest, I went into the events to I want to play a new person every time because I want to see what they can bring to the table. So I never really cared about being like the best at first. I cared more about playing these type of players that I can't play normally at home. Like if I'm from New York, I want to play someone from Virginia, Chicago, California, Las Vegas, Seattle, and etc. Because that's what the tournaments they bring. They bring just new type of competition, and it's always fun to play different people because you want to see like what they do, and then maybe it can entice to make your type of gameplay better.
Right, right. You mentioned having a curfew of 6 o'clock. Did you get in
Yes.
trouble a lot of times for? Because I assume you went back to that adult crowd because of the better competition, right?
Yeah, I went back, but not every day. It was more of like a Friday night type of thing. I got my parents to agree, like, oh, yeah, you can stay out later on Friday. So I was like, yes. So I lost a lot of money every Friday night for a long time.
Hmm. What was the worst, if you can quantify all of them? What was kind of the worst you got in trouble in terms of just staying out? How far were you driven to play the game?
Um, I I think it was more when I went to a tournament the first time, because they didn't care if I stayed out that long, because where the arcade and I lived, it was pretty close, maybe like 15 minutes. So it was definitely not bad. But I think the worst was one day because I used to go to the arcade every Saturday at 10 a.m. because that's when it opens, because to practice, even if no one is there at 10 a.m. I just want to practice against the computer, because the games weren't allowed to have it at home at the time because it was only for arcade.
Hmm.
And this guy was like, "Oh, do you want to go to a tournament?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure. How far is it?" They're like, "Oh, yeah, it's pretty close. Don't worry about it." I go with him, stranger. And he was pretty much a stranger. I seen him in the arcade, but I don't really know him as a personal like relationship. And he's like, "Yeah, it's a lot. There's a lot of traffic at the moment." He's like, "Just go to sleep." So I'm like, "All right, I'll go to sleep." I wake up 5 hours later. I'm in Virginia, and I was like, "What the hell, Virginia?" I don't even know where Virginia is on the map at the time. So I felt like it was like kind of a kidnapping or whatever. And then that was the first tournament. It was called, I forgot what it was called. It was an arcade there is in Virginia, and they closed down. But it was like one of those monthlies that they always have. So every month the best players from like the Maryland, Virginia area, they come to play there. So I was there. And this was a time when Marvel vs. Capcom 2 and Capcom versus SNK 1 was out. And I won both of those tournaments. And so, it's 11 p.m. and I'm like, "Oh, when can we go back?" He's like, "Oh, we can't go back till tomorrow morning." And, I had to call my dad. And he was furious. He was so mad. He's like, "Oh, where are you?" And blah, blah, blah. And I was like, "Oh, I'm at my friend's house in New Jersey. So the trains are like they're not running at the moment, so I can't leave until tomorrow morning." And he was like, "Oh, you're in big trouble, blah, blah, blah." So imagine if I said Virginia, he would have whooped my ass even more probably.
Did they ever?
So,
Well, did they ever find out that it was Virginia? Did you ever go back and tell them?
oh, definitely no, not to this day. Not even to this day they knew I was in Virginia, but it was really bad. And the worst part about the trip was that like the guy that drove me, his car broke down. So I had to take a Greyhound, a
Oh
fifth like
no.
14-year-old kid taking a Greyhound by himself back to New York. Damn, that was some scary stuff
Was it
in my eyes.
was it worth it at the end of the day?
It was definitely worth it, but it also kind of pulled some drama because like I didn't know about Shoryuken.com, like it's a fighting game website,
Hmm.
for like the longest time during that time. So it was like supposedly it was posted up on Shoryuken.com that some random kid from New York City went to this tournament and won the tournament here, blah blah blah. So it was like a random like outsider just came in. So then everyone was like, I guess talking on behalf on me, saying, "Oh yeah, he'll whip all of West Coast's asses and blah blah blah." So East Coast is coming back on the map, type of stuff. And I didn't know about this. I just wanted to play.
Right.
So I thought that was kind of interesting and funny at the same time.
Was that kind of the beginning of the legend of Justin Wong? Maybe.
Yeah, it was definitely a start because that was when everyone kind of knew who I was, and I guess they wanted to see what I do in the near future tournaments.
When was I'm trying to think back, or in terms of East Coast West Coast, that was kind of the big thing because nowadays it's more global.
Yeah.
There still is that feud, obviously, but that was kind of the heyday for the whole East Coast versus West Coast, right? When you first started playing these games back in 2002, 2003 days.
Yeah, it was I think around 2002. No, it was actually, yeah, 2002. That was when the whole East Coast versus West Coast thing came up with the let's have a 5-on-5, but it only mattered in Marvel vs. Capcom 2. The other
Okay.
games no one really cared about, but I just think that because Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is probably was the most popular game in the United States at the time.
Mm.
So there was a lot of West Coast players and a lot of East Coast players. They were like saying, "Oh, you're nothing without Justin," and stuff like that. Let's have a 5-on-5. So I think that happened at Evo in 2003, where there was a 5-on-5, and I think we lost because one of our best players at the time, Sanford Kelly, he couldn't make it there, and that was like a big big thing because we had to replace them with someone that was at Evo at the time, and it
Mm.
was kind of like really hard. So they had the bragging rights, but when I won Evo for Marvel for like consecutive times, it didn't matter to them because they're like, oh, it's just the Wong Coast or whatever. It's not East Coast, it's the Wong Coast.
There you go. There you go. In terms of all the different teams, everyone that kind of follows or has just started following the fighting game scene now knows you as Evil Genius's Justin Wong. What were some of the other teams you were a part of prior to Evil Geniuses?
The only team I was part of before Evil Genius was Empire Arcadia, and it was basically a a organization that was developed inside of New York City that like basically he they Empire Arcadia took all the players, all the fighting game players mainly in New York City to just for this one big giant massive group to try to travel to all these tournaments and represent Empire Arcadia. And basically it's one of those things where Empire Arcadia was kind of, I guess, not liked. I don't know why. Maybe because it was just kind of ghetto, I guess. It just looked ghetto, sounded ghetto, and no one's gonna take a guy with a power glove seriously at the time because it's one of those things where people just laugh online, but that's what he likes a lot. Like that's his passion.
Now, when EG first approached you, did you know much about kind of their history, I guess, in the esports world?
Actually, I definitely never heard of them until they approached me. And the funny part was I just came out from like WCG Ultimate Gamer, like the house. Like
Oh,
I
that's
was like
right. That's
I was
right.
free. I was released out of the world, and it's like, oh, I could. It's like getting out of prison or something for the first time, and then the first thing you do is that Marn, from my friend Marn, he
Hmm.
was the first member of Evil Genius for the fighting game. He contacts me right away, right when I get out. Oh, we need to have a meeting with Evil Geniuses because we want you on Evil Geniuses. So that's the first thing I did right when I got out of WCG
I
was have a meeting.
I had totally forgotten about the fact that you were on the WCG Ultimate Game. That was the first season of it, wasn't it?
No, second season.
Second season, second season. What was that whole experience like? What was it like being on one of the, I guess, a reality TV show?
It was definitely interesting, and it's something that that I was happy to do, but it was also very hard because I think at this time of age, everyone's so infatuated with like internet, cell phones, like emails and stuff like that. So I did not have that for like at least 3 weeks. So because of that, I was going crazy in my mind. I was like, oh, man, there's nothing to do in this house. Like we're just like having like little campfire type of talks everywhere. So it was definitely crazy. I can't check my Twitter, can't check my email, can't check my Facebook. I couldn't do anything. So, but it was definitely something super fun. Everyone saw me crash a car, which was kind of cool. But they didn't. I just want to point out that I actually did very well in the driving challenge. You just have to know that the windshield was pitch black, so you could not see. You had to look at a third person view, little camera that was on top of the hood. So I think I got some props. I should get some props for that. I was just a little too excited in the end because I was like, oh, look, it's the finish line. So maybe I kind of spun out of control just a little bit, but I was just a little excited. That's all.
What was I guess, your favorite challenge that you had on that? Because the show, for those that don't know, each show is kind of based around a certain game. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
For that show, and then you kind of just kept on advancing, and then if you lost, of course, you were just taken off the show. But what was your favorite challenge?
My favorite challenge was like the hockey puck one, where you're a human hockey puck. So it was like a giant slingshot, and you go from one hockey rink to the other hockey rink. I thought that was the coolest one ever because it was just like you don't really do that in real life, really.
Hmm.
Like you can drive a car through like a obstacle course. That's why they have go-karts, right? And you could do like that. You could do rock climbing and stuff like that. You could go to raging waters, but a human hockey puck, that was kind of cool. I thought that was my favorite one.
Was there any stories or events or drama that happened kind of off camera that you wish they would have put into the show?
Um,
Because everything gets cut for that show, obviously. You have to condense it down to a 30-minute or hour-long show.
well, there was definitely a lot of boredom type of drama that kind of happened.
Yeah.
It's kind of very, I guess there was I there was I could see why they didn't want to put on a show, just because I think it's more like, since Sci-Fi Channel is more of like, you can't have like a rated R show. You have to have like
Mm,
a PG-13 type of thing.
I see. I
Yeah,
gotcha.
so
Well, let's go back and talk about Evil Geniuses. Was it a tough decision to initially join them?
yeah, it was kind of hard just because like, as a person, I guess I'm sometimes too nice, and it's because of that, like, a lot of people, I get really sad if someone's like, "Oh no, don't go," and I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry." So it was definitely very hard because it's really hard for me to break someone's heart.
Mm.
So it took a really really long time to like think about it, because I remember Alex, he approached me since like February, before I joined in July. So it definitely took a long time, a long just in terms of thinking, because he was right. Like, if I want to like make it bigger, I have to like do something bigger and like kind of evolve with everyone else. And that was like the kind of like the Hail Mary type of decision maker right there, that I wanted to join Evil Genius, because I know that Alex and everyone else from Evil Genius can help me just pursue my goals even further.
Were your parents brought into the equation at all?
Definitely not. They they only found out like
Oh,
maybe
you didn't even tell them.
yeah, that didn't even tell them anything. They probably only found out like 2 years ago, when they
Wow.
randomly was flipping the TV channel and saw me probably crashing a car on TV. That's the
Wait,
only way
they
they
didn't
found.
even know you were on WCJ, the
Nope.
WC. Wow. Why didn't you tell them that? You think they wouldn't allow you on, or?
I mean, I feel like Asian parents are kind of strict, and they're like, "Oh, video games are bad for you," and stuff like that. So you can't do anything with video game. It's a waste of your time. Blah 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 blah. That's what a lot of like kind of like families kind of do to you. They're not very, I guess they don't really think that video games can do anything, but
Right.
now they kind of accept it, because they're like, "Oh, we saw you on TV, so you're probably doing good for yourself and stuff like that."
Mm.
So they kind of, I guess, neutral about it. As long as I'm happy, I guess as long as I can live under a roof, they're happy.
Has it gotten better since then? Obviously, since because
Uh,
you now live on the West Coast.
yeah.
Was that a hard thing for them?
Not really. Well, because I kind of told them, "Oh yeah, I'm moving to California to work a 9 to 5." That's why I kind of told them. So they were like, "Okay, that's fine." But now they know that I just kind of like do gaming and stuff,
Mm.
and they're like, "Oh," they gave me that response. "Oh." So it's whatever to them, as long as I'm doing good. I think they're okay with it.
Do they know kind of? I mean, how you've been to? Let's see. You went to Korea recently, right?
Yeah.
Is that the only place out of the U.S. that you've been for?
No, I've been to Japan. I've been to Europe, like France and London. I've been to Mexico. I've been to Canada. Those are mainly all the places. Oh, I've been to Australia. And
Do they not see that as like a good thing, or did you even tell them about the fact that you've been to all these places? Do they know?
oh, they knew I went to Japan,
Okay.
but other places they don't know. They only knew I went to Japan because I told them that I'm going for a vacation,
Mm,
and not for a tournament. And I needed my pass to get a passport, so I need to get like the social security card, birth certificate, all that type of stuff to fill out at the post office. So I had to ask them for that information.
okay.
So that's the only place they know I went.
Did you tell your sisters?
Oh yeah, they know.
Okay.
They they're whatever about it. They're like, "Oh, you're crazy, but it's kind of cool that you get to travel to all these places, you know." It's just they're young too, so they understand the whole rebellious age, and I want to do what I want to do type of stuff.
Are you kind of happy with all the decisions you've made that have led up to now, or would you do it differently, kind of looking back?
Um, I think I'm pretty content with all the stuff that all the decisions I made up to now. There's always those other stuff that like you will always want to do better, but it's just better not to regret it and just like keep trying to progress forward.
Well, I want to jump now to fighting games and kind of get away from your personal story. In terms of being a mental game, in your opinion, are fighting games more mental than a lot of people perceive them to be?
I definitely think in the beginner stages, it's you just, just press buttons and have fun with it. But if you want to go past it and see what like everyone else is doing, like, in terms of like the top players, there's always a giant mental game involved. And I feel like in any type of competitive game, there's always going to be that strong mental game in there where you have to read your opponents and see if you can see a habit that they have. It's just like that in general. I'm pretty sure it's like that in StarCraft and sports games and any type of game. But in fighting games, yeah, mental games are is super important because you kind of want to know what your opponent's habits are, kind of want to condition them to do something that you want them to do, so you can punish them for it.
What is the best way to kind of to practice that? Is it just playing more, playing as much as possible?
Playing as much as possible is always the number one thing, but also I would suggest to take notes of players that you want to like play or beat, and
Hmm.
and try to like focus on what their habits are and see if you could condition them to do something that you want to do. So because of that, I think if you do that, you can like gauge on what, I guess, like how strong their mentality is. So if because I know like a lot of players take notes and they study like top player videos to see if they could see like what's their flaw in their game. What can I do to what can I do to get an advantage to try to beat them if I had to run into them in a tournament?
What would you say are some of the biggest hurdles for people kind of trying to get into the scene, or that maybe even some of the best players in the world still kind of have today? Is there one kind of general thing that people are always trying to get better at?
I think the biggest hurdle is that a lot of people kind of lack originality now just because of the amount of content that's dished out on YouTube and all these websites are, publishing it. It's like when you're um before YouTube came out and all this like internet crazy stuff, you always had to kind of develop your own type of strategy at your local arcade or just like your group of friends, and you can only show it off at the tournament. So you always have like that, oh, save that stuff for nationals type of mentality back in the day, where that's like the one deciding factor that could possibly help you win the tournament. But I feel like now, like, since games are being figured out so fast now because of YouTube and everyone can see it, because when you see one thing on YouTube, it might give someone else an idea to do something else, and then that guy can figure something out and publish that on YouTube, and it just keeps going and going at a very fast pace. Like, not to say that's a bad thing, but it just kind of makes the growth in terms of like players like stagnant.
What would you say, to obviously the pro players out there as well as new players, if there was kind of one thing to practice on, would it be the fact to try to make yourself unique, or is there a certain fundamental, kind of in StarCraft we have them? Is there kind of a correlation to fighting games with that? Is there one single thing that people should always work on?
I think the one single thing that people should always work on is probably like execution, because like execution is like the your number one damage. Your the most, like, let's say what kind of like how good your combos are. If you can master your combos and landing it and making sure if you land it and it hurts or it kills them, that is like something that everyone should learn, and that's like what the most important thing in the fighting game. Like if you want to play one fighting game to another fighting game and you don't know the mechanics, but you just know a combo, that's probably like the most important thing to learn at first. And then you can learn the mechanics of what the game can offer in terms of movement, spacing, universal commands, and etc.
What would you say is your worst, kind of fundamental ability that you're always trying to find, or that you always find yourself working on?
Well, I don't know if okay, in my circle of like all the like top players, I always feel that I my execution is not as strong as other players' execution. So, but I feel like I have a really good strategy in term and really good spacing, really good reactions. But I think sometimes my execution, because that's is my downfall. But that's why I always do like if you look at if anyone looks at my matches, I always do the most simplest things. Nothing really too crazy, but nothing fancy like Marlon Pie or stuff like that. But more like, okay, he just goes in, does the simple stuff, and gets the job done. But I always wish I had better execution though.
Would you say that? I mean, you have a term basically after your own name, the Wong factor. Is this an actual thing, or is it just something that? Because it's kind of another word for comeback, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that something that you just find yourself naturally good at? You don't kind of break under pressure?
Yeah, I get the one factor is basically like it's like being clutch, but it's like super super clutch where if you have like no life and you just make a miraculous comeback. So I think the only reason why I'm really good at it is because when you're growing up in arcade as a kid, you're not gonna have a lot of money. My grandma maybe gave me $1 a day. That's 4 quarters. Games were 50 cents a day for 50 cents a game. So that means I was only allowed to have 2 losses. So if I'm down my last game, I'm gonna play my heart out and make sure I do my best not to lose. So I think because of like that mentality I had back in the day when I was growing up, it just kind of stuck with me even to now. And like so, even there's like dire situations where you have like 1% chance to win, I will always fight for that 1% to and make it like actually possible.
Kind of on a daily or perhaps a weekly basis. How many hours do you spend practicing?
Um, I mean, when a new fighting game comes out, I practice a lot. But once, like, let's say it's in the middle of things and there's not much to practice, probably not that much. But let's say on the average, maybe I try at least to put in at least 8 hours a week. But recently, I've been playing a lot more just because, like, I have this a better setup in terms of where my computer and where my console is and where I kind of want to stream in the near future. So I've been playing a lot online, a lot more. So I know a lot of people has run into me online. So it's definitely fun just playing all those games at once.
Now, Slasher would kill me if I didn't ask this question. 8 hours a week compared to kind of StarCraft, they practice probably 8, 10 hours a day. League of Legends teams, I think they were saying the Chinese team was practicing 16 hours a day for the past 3 months or something like that for the season 2 finals coming up. Do you think that more? I mean, if you spent more than 8 hours practicing, is there even that much more to practice in fighting games? Or
It's, the thing is, in fighting games, you kind of don't really have to practice that much, in my opinion. I think StarCraft and like games like League of Legends and like Dota 2, I feel like you have to practice a lot more because besides like let's say League of Legends and Dota, you have to work on your team synergy. There's no team synergy in fighting games, but StarCraft you also have to like worry about like I guess management in terms of like resources and etc.
right?
I don't know anything about StarCraft, but that's why I could see I could kind of gauge where they have to like kind of plan everything a lot like better. But in fighting games, you just have to work on your execution. Like, so I just do a combo maybe like 10 times a day, and then if I can do a land at 10 times a day, then my practice is done. And then I jump on online to play with my friends and casually. But that's not really practice. That's more like just like kind of messing around.
Mm.
So in reality, when you play, because most fighting games are kind of like the same. So from Street Fighter 4 from to Street Fighter 2, Ryu is going to be the same character no matter what. He has the same buttons, it looks the same, it's just different graphics, same special moves and everything. You just have to learn the mechanics from the beginning, and the beginning is is the time where you would put most of your time. And once you figure everything out, the only time you kind of really have to practice is before, like a week before the tournament. That's when you put the grind in. But other than that, most of the fighting games are kind of the same in terms of mechanic wise.
Are there any skills or mechanics that you learned kind of in fighting games that would translate over into some of these other games? And if so, what other games would they translate well into?
Um, hmm. Well, I think a lot fighting games it gives you a lot of patience. So if a certain game has requires a lot of patience and not to be frustrated, it's definitely like that. I think like when I play League of Legends, it's one of those games where I like to be patient in, and sometimes I feel like patience is a good thing, but it's also a bad thing depending on the your champion that you used or whatever. But it's definitely something that I think fighting games could transcend because like Alex Valle, he used to be I guess a professional Gears of War player.
Hmm.
So it like when he's trying to describe Gears of War to me, he's saying that it's like Street Fighter, where you're playing footsies and spacing, and footsie is basically like you're trying to like poke the opponent. You're trying to see what they're gonna do and then how you can react after. So because of that, like he was playing Gears of War a lot, and Marn, he's a fighting game player, and he's very aggressive in like the fighting games they play. So he plays League of Legends, and the way he plays League of Legends is like super aggressive, and like he's pretty popular in the League of Legends world at the moment. So there's definitely those type of attributes that determines how good you can play in other games.
Would you trade in the hours you've kind of put in to fighting games for any other game out there right now, or are you kind of or I guess the better question, not because you obviously wouldn't, but if there was a game out there that you would trade the hours into, what would it be?
Um, let's see, if there was a game, that's kind of hard. I like League of Legends a lot, but I'm very against team play. I cannot stand teams.
Do
I
you
hate
rage
it.
it? Do you rage at your teammates, Justin?
I hate teams because I feel like if they mess up, it's over. Like it's like what I can't do anything. Like it's at least like in Street Fighter. Like if there's a team tournament, like if you lose your game, that person loses the game, and you just have to play it out and like just win. Have a 3-game win streak, for example. But in League of Legends, if this guy loses, dies all his time in his lane and feeds this one champion, you can't really make a comeback. It's so hard. But I guess I would trade into StarCraft 2 just because it's a 1v1 in terms of tournaments. And it's just like very interesting when I watch it because it's like, oh, even though I don't know what's happening, it just looks pretty cool.
Do you have I mean, is StarCraft kind of the game that you probably respect the most outside of fighting games, or is there another one that you have more respect for?
Yeah, StarCraft is probably the game I respect the most because like after talking to a lot of EG guys,
Hmm.
they were trying to explain to me how like StarCraft is, and going to like working conventions for Evil Geniuses, and they have like a fighting game booth and a StarCraft booth. So
Sure.
fighting games are gonna go a lot faster than StarCraft. You can't beat someone in StarCraft in like 30 seconds. In fighting games you can. So I'm watching StarCraft while I'm playing the Street Fighter or Marvel, and it's just like very interesting in how much patience and how much like waiting is involved and how much like planning is involved. So I think that's really interesting, and that's one of the games I probably always wanted to play. I bought it but never played it.
Have you watched a lot of competitive matches? Because I think you were at was it MLG Anaheim? Is that where you attended?
Columbus.
Columbus. Did you watch and stay and watch a lot of the StarCraft stuff there?
Yeah, I was watching a lot of MLG StarCraft Columbus, and I was trying to see why people were like, "Oh my God, that was such an awesome play," and I don't understand anything. The only thing I understand was Protoss, nuke. That's the only thing I understand. Explosion, I understood that. But other than that, like if
Oh, in
someone,
terms of the keywords, you understood.
yeah, if someone like built something, like he built this Mother Lord or something, and that was everyone was like, "Oh my God, it's over," and I was like, "Huh? What's over?" And I don't understand any of that.
Oh, okay. Um, there's countless titles that come out each year for the fighting game scene. Which has been your favorite, kind of in the past couple of years that has come out? Is it Street Fighter Arcade Edition?
Um, at first it was Street Fighter, but I would like to say that, like, no, even though a lot of people kind of hate the game or say the game is really bad, I like Marvel's Capcom 3 the best, because I grew up in the Marvel's Capcom. Like, it was my first game
Hmm.
in terms of like actually knowing how to play a fighting game. So because of that, like Marvel's Capcom 3 will always be the number one game for me in terms of like for current generation.
Is there a pretty big divide between kind of the Street Fighter world and the Marvel world, or does it mesh a lot of times in the fighting game scene?
I mean, both the games are super different,
Hmm.
but in terms of like entrance and like popularity, Street Fighter and Marvel are kind of like neck to neck because it's hard for tournament organizers to say we want the final game to be Marvel, we want the final game to be Street Fighter, because like for example, in Evo 2011, like Street Fighter was more a hype than Marvel's Capcom 3 Finals. But in this year, 2012, Marvel Finals was super more hype than Street Fighter Finals this year. So it's kind of hard to tell which one to put in terms if you're a tournament organizer or what. So I also felt like at season beatings, Street Fighter Final was 100% more hype than the Marvel vs. Capcom 3 finals that they had. So, like I said, it's just those two games are probably like the top two games in the fighting game community at the moment. That just like no other game can like get close at the moment.
You mentioned kind of the fact that there is so much content on YouTube. Recently, the past probably 6 months, there's always a fighting game stream on throughout the week with these different tournaments going on, or not tournaments, sorry, the weeklies kind of, as you guys call them. Is there any oversaturation right now in the fighting game scene? Is there too much content in your opinion?
Um, I think the only type of oversaturation is that there are too many fighting games coming out. So because of that, you know, since there's too many fighting games coming out, it's really hard for other people to see which fighting game they're interested in. Like I think there was this one week where like Skullgirls Virtua Fighter 5 came out, and then like 2 weeks later, um, Persona 4 came out or KOF came out. I forgot which game was it, but it was like four fighting games came out like one like under a span of 2 months. So because of that, a lot of people were like, which one to choose? And I think since that happens, a lot of the communities kind of like, all right, I kind of give up. And I'm going to go back to this and stick with Street Fighter or Marvel because that's like what everyone is playing. Because if like a lot of people, I think they don't play the games because they like the game. I think they play it because they want to be part of the community. So since those games are not that strong compared to Street Fighter and Marvel, that's the reason why it's a lot of people don't want to put time into those games.
Um, I'm trying to kind of phrase this question properly, but what would you say really makes the best fighter out there right now? What is the core fundamental that a fighting game has to have, otherwise it's shit?
A lot of people has a lot of different opinions on a good fighting game. So, what a good fighting game to me is this. For example, is a lot of people's gonna hate me for it. Is I think Cross Tekken, Street Fighter Cross Tekken is a good fighting game.
Oh shit.
But a lot of people won't agree with me because there's no comeback factor or whatever, right? There's no ultras, there's no X factors, there's none of that. Street Fighter Cross Tekken is like one of those. It's like an old school game before Street Fighter 4 came out, more like Capcom versus SNK 2 or like even like old school Street Fighter. So it's definitely one of those games where time overs will happen and a lot of waiting is involved. And I think a lot of people they don't like waiting. That's why people like Street Fighter and Marvel because it's just people just go in, and when they go in, it's like you could see like their life bars explode and everything, but you don't really see that in Cross Tekken. And I think a lot of people do not like that because of that. And I also think that's another reason why Virtua Fighter isn't doing so good because there's no comeback factor in Virtua Fighter. It's just straight. If you're the better player, you're always gonna win. But in Marvel or Street Fighter, sometimes that's not the case. Especially in Marvel, because once the character goes red, you can easily make a comeback and outplay your opponent. But it's really not outplay. You just kind of just the game mechanics kind of helped you and make you play. And because of that, it makes people feel like superstars. And if you're gonna play a game, you don't want to just get your ass beat. You want to play a game because you think you're good at it.
Right, right. What would you say is the best current generation fighter right now?
The best current generation fighter for overall,
Yeah,
I would
best
yeah,
fighting game right now.
not my personal favorite, right? But
It's up to you.
all right, my personal favorite is Street Fighter Cross Tekken in terms of best overall fighting for mechanics, but that's my opinion. But I think for overall for everyone, it has to be Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition 2012, just because all the results are like it's not like the same characters are winning anymore. There's not like it's always Rufus and Viper. It's like all these other characters like in top eight, because in most of the time, when you see like a top eight results, you always see the same characters back and forth, back and forth. But in Street Fighter, there's a lot of different characters, there's a lot of different variety. Like you always have like Guile, Balrog, Rufus, like the whole cast. Like it's just always evolving the characters. Even like the worst character, the supposedly worst character in the game, Hakan, is actually getting a lot stronger now. So because of that, I would have to say Street Fighter Arcade Edition 2012 for overall.
You know, at Evo we saw kind of, I wouldn't call it the rise, but one of the big things at Evo this year was King of Fighters. Have you kind of dabbled in that at all? Do you have any interest in that game, possibly playing it? Because the crowd, obviously, the Mexican crowd there at Evo was just insane. That was probably one of the biggest takeaways I think a lot of people had from this year's Evo there in Las Vegas. So, what are your thoughts on that game?
I honestly think that KOF 13 is a super amazing game, just because like it's built well. It has like that wow factor where like like you have that boom, like that, oh, one touch kill type of stuff. So a lot of people enjoy that, and a lot of people enjoy like how good a lot of players are, because but the only problem is that the skill gap is really 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 hard, like, and high. So like for example, you have like the Koreans, and you have like Bala, and like a bunch of like people from SoCal. They're like maybe let's say out of 1 through 10, they're a 10. And then everyone else that's not from that area, that's not from Korea or not from Southern California, they're probably like a 2. So it's always going to be the same results over and over. And people do not like seeing same results over and over. They want to see like upsets. They want to see people, just like new people just rising up. That's what people love. That's what like evolves the community. And because of that, I think that KOF 13's community is just staying the same. It's not like evolving or whatever. The only reason why it was hype, because everyone assumed that Bala was gonna win. They assumed that Bala is easily the champion for Evo, but it was an upset because Mad KOF from Korea, he took it.
Mm.
And everyone was like, "Oh my God!" That was the reason why the finals were so amazing, because it was just those two players back and forth, and they were like, "Oh my God!" The Almighty Bala, who never lost a tournament until Evo, actually lost the tournament. And now I also feel like the game's kind of just slowly dying,
Mm.
but it's one of those games that only like if you're a hardcore player in the KOF, they will always stay. But the people that are like, yeah, KOF is a pastime for me, they'll probably leave, which is pretty bad. So I think that the community could still work on it to make the game like grow, but it's just one of those things that's really hard, especially if the skill gap is like super high. There's like not even a middle. It's just like you're either a 10 or like a 2.
Mm. Um, you mentioned kind of the Korean crowd, obviously infiltration taking this year's Evo and Street Fighter. For a while back, kind of, I guess, a couple years ago, Japan was kind of seen as the best out there, and now Korea's doing very well, and it seems more global is kind of what I'm getting at. Do you think that type of shift for fighting games is good right now, or did you kind of like the days where you kind of had the U.S. crowd, you knew the best person there, but they were in no way kind of in the same area, I guess, as a lot of the people over in Japan?
Um, I think the global crowd is like the coolest thing ever, right? Because at the back in the day, it was only USA versus Japan. Like no other country was ever like thought about. Like, but now you have like Europe stepping up, you have Korea stepping up, you have Taiwan stepping up, you also even have like Kuwait stepping up, even like the Caribbean, the Dominican Republic, like everyone's just like stepping up. Which, and I think because of that, it makes the game a lot more exciting. Because who doesn't like new competition? Who doesn't like upsets? It's like one of those things where like Street Fighter, like Capcom just puts a new character in, like, oh, this is a this character is from a random country, and he's gonna come into competition. That's what the tournaments are these days, and I think that's like the coolest thing.
One really final question for the fighting game portion of this. A week ago at Season's Beatings, we had the Kami player. You guys had a Kami player by the name of K-Brad win, and you went on the record to say that Street Fighter 4 AE is really evolved. What did you really mean by that statement? How is it evolved right now?
Well, I feel like at the moment, any top player can beat any top player. So so if there was like 32 top players, and it would be like completely random where you don't know who's gonna win. Because back in the day, like in Street Fighter 4, it was just like I always won most majority of the Street Fighter 4 tournaments in the United States, and Daigo basically won every tournament that he attended. But now it's just completely not the case where you saw at Evo, Daigo lost to Infiltration and he lost to Zhao Hai from China, which was like, you would, I don't, I feel like, okay, I understand Infiltration as a top player, but no one really knew who Zhao Hai was for a long time. And they didn't know, they only knew him as a KOF player, but he came out, he made top 8 at Evo and he won against Daigo. And then it was just crazy. So since like everyone, and after Evo, Infiltration was winning a lot of tournaments. Like he won the Capcom 25th anniversary for Asia, so he's going to San Francisco. So everyone thought he was the favorite, no matter what tournament he's at, right? He's like the new Daigo. But then, at season beating, K-Brad just blew him up, and because of that, it's like, no, it's not because K-Brad is better. It's because that every top player is on the same playing field. So whatever happens, anything can happen. It's like if you like this person versus this person, it's going to be like a coin toss.
So if I were to ask you right now who the best player is, there's probably not an answer for that, is what you're saying?
I mean, overall, at the current moment, I would have to say Infiltration,
Mm-hmm.
just because of his current track record.
Okay.
But in terms of like, do I think he's going to win a tournament? I can't answer that one. I could say to
Right,
anyone,
right.
any top player that's attending that tournament could win the tournament.
Okay. All right, well, guys, we've been going for about an hour now. We're going to take a quick little break, and when we come back, we'll be jumping into esports and the fighting game scene, my favorite topic in slashers as well. So we'll be right back, guys. Do not go anywhere. More Real Talk with Justin Wong coming right up. All right, guys, welcome back to Real Talk here with Justin Wong. Let's talk about esports and the fighting game scene. Now, I mentioned esports a little bit earlier, but I want to go more in depth and get your thoughts on this thing that has been talked about probably to death, but we've never really heard, I guess, your thoughts on it. First off, can you kind of explain some of the issues, or I guess explain what this whole debate is about to people out there that don't really know that much about it?
Well, okay, so a lot of esports and FGC are like basically completely two different entities at the moment. And FGC is basically all the funding comes from the community and basically from the tournament organizers' pockets. Well, I guess esports has fundings from sponsors. Like let's say MOG has a Dr. Pepper sponsor and an Astro Gaming sponsor, and other organizations have etc. So it's really hard to at the moment to fuse between esports and FGC, especially when um, a lot of the Capcom games. Like I don't think Capcom is interested in being part of esports, but a lot of other companies, such like West Warner Brothers, who is making Mortal Kombat, Team Ninja, Tecmo Bowl is doing DOA. They're definitely esports pro positive. So, you see Mortal Kombat 9 and the most recent one, Tekken Tag 2, is going to be an MOG. So it's not, I guess, 100% there that if at the fighting game community is involved with esports. It's just only, I guess, the Capcom games at the moment.
Now, what are your thoughts on the whole matter? Do you have a side to this? I mean, a lot of people probably throw you into the whole esports side being a part of EG. But how do you feel about the whole matter? Should they just shut up and come on over and start raking in the money? Or
I mean, okay, I understand why that the Capcom games does not want to be part of it from in terms of the community standpoint, just because it's something that the community has been growing for the last 2 decades, and like Evo is basically, it's from the Evo's organizers are part of the community, and they put like their heart and soul into making their event to be the best fighting game event throughout the whole entire year. So I could say from their standpoint, but in terms of like progression, in terms of evolution wise, I feel like esports is definitely something that should be like looked into for the Capcom games, just because if you want the community to grow into like a different type of field, it might help out everyone. It might help out like it definitely will help out top players just because the payout scale will be larger, but it will also help out just like more people getting involved into the community. And a lot of people believe that, oh, if let's say MOG has that Capcom, then all the grassroots events will die out. But I don't necessarily think it's true. I would attend both events. That's just how I am. But I think there's more worried about if MOG dates will conflict with the fighting game dates. But the thing is that people have to realize is that MOG is not just a fighting game tournament. It's a tournament that has multi-genre games in terms of like they have League of Legends, they have StarCraft, they have like FPS like Halo 4 or whatever. And because of that, they have to like work with a lot of other communities. So some events will have to like, I guess, just kind of conflict with each other no matter what, but not every event will conflict.
do you think that the fighting game community and esports will kind of always be two separate things? Or is there something that can be done to kind of bridge the two communities together? Or are they just always going to be separate?
I would hope for them to just be one entity in general, and I think it's definitely something that's gonna be really, really hard. But like I said, it's working, it's slowly getting there just because Mortal Kombat 9 is involved with MOG, and you have Tekken Tag there, and you have Street Fighter 4 at DreamHack, which is interesting. And the only games that are just not there is just like Street Fighter 4 and Marvel vs. Capcom 3 in the United States type of field, but outside of the United States, I feel like they're already part of esports, especially like because I went to ESWC for Street Fighter 4 in 2010, and DreamHack has Street Fighter 4 there every year. They also had Street Fighter Cross Tekken there, so it's definitely something that can I guess like, little pieces will just be put together.
For a while there, I was really looking at kind of the FGC when that whole debate, I guess, started, I guess 6 months ago or something like that on Live on 3. Is it as bad as it used to be? It seems like it's a little bit less, I guess, harsh on both sides these days. Is that true in your opinion?
I think it's better now. I think back in the day was a lot worse just because like I don't remember too much detail about it, but I just know that before MOG got so big, it was part of Evo in 2005, and after that, they just did not work with each other anymore. But I don't know the politics in terms of what happened between those two entities. But I just know that they used to work together in 2005 because that's when Evo and MOG kind of like cross promoted each other that one Evo.
Hmm. Now, we mentioned kind of evil geniuses here at the start of this. Did you catch any shit initially when you joined up with the team, both kind of from the community as well as from your friends and other players in the scene?
Well, to be honest, the only person that gave me shit was Triforce. But everyone else that was like part of the fighting game community or like just my friends in general, they were like yeah, good stuff in joining Evil Geniuses. Like everyone was really happy about it because it's like they just see that it's one big step for like a fighting game player joining a professional gaming team. So it definitely like gives more positive thinking in terms of maybe fighting games should be part of esports, or maybe more teams should pick up more fighting game players, which did happen. Is that more members of Evil Genius were like Ricky Ortiz and Flo and Puerto Rican Borog, and then they also have Complexity with Filipino Champ and stuff like that. So it's just overall, it's growing slowly but surely, but it would be nice to just to grow a little faster because it's like, this debate's it's like already been long enough already.
What is the next step that makes it go faster? Is it just a change kind of in the community's feelings about everything, or is there something else that could be done?
I mean, I feel like just why don't you just try it for one tournament and see how it goes, right? Why don't you give MOG or any big league the rights to just hold one tournament first for Capcom and see how it goes in terms of like, would it jeopardize it, or would it make it bad, or would it just turn out okay? It's just, I know a lot of people have drama back in the day, but if someone kind of changes and make a new leaf over it, there's nothing wrong with just trying it.
Do you think it's kind of uh, a miscredit to say kind of esports in the fighting game community when it's really kind of esports and Capcom, since they're really I guess the big game holder here with the big titles that they have? Is that a fair statement?
It's definitely a fair statement. I also feel like since Capcom is not originally from USA but from Japan, I don't think they might not understand the importance of what what they could do for their community and like their name. But I just think that a lot of the companies that are involved of esports already, they already have like a USA attitude where they're like, okay, it's okay to have a tournament, to have your tournament with our tournament, and have your brand with our brand. So it just kind of helps everyone both ways, and also helps the community because I think a lot of people will go to MOG Dallas for Mortal Kombat and Tekken Tag, especially Tekken Tag. So I could imagine that in the Capcom games, they would get a lot more people just because it's a bigger community overall.
Will you be attending Dallas, by the way? Just a random question.
No, I won't be attending just because I'm really bad at Mortal Kombat and Tekken Tag.
Okay, okay. Kind of to jump back into this, what has been the biggest jump forward for the fighting game community in the past couple of years, in your opinion?
The biggest jump forward, in my opinion, is probably from the 2008 to 2009, because in 2008, like it was like the smallest turnout for Evo from like mankind. I completely thought that fighting games were dead at 2008, but when
Really?
2009 came out and they released Street Fighter 4 and the whole GameStop tournament thing, it just kind of like blew up. It made everyone came back. It made more people join because Street Fighter 4 was so good, and the online netcode was so good, so everyone was able to play. And because of the GameStop thing, more people heard that, oh, if you qualify, you can go to Evo. So people was like, oh, what's Evo? So they go, they probably Googled Evo and they're like, oh my God, I want to go to this convention or event or this tournament and play in it with all these players. And when 2009 happened for Evo, it's like you just saw a crazy amount of players just came out of nowhere. So many people, and after 2009, Evo's turnout has just been bigger and bigger and bigger. So it's definitely Street Fighter 4 is the main reason why fighting games are getting so popular now.
Do you think that the game Street Fighter 4 has been out long enough to possibly start talking about a new Street Fighter, or is it going to be a couple more years?
I think Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition 2012 can still be here for at least 2 to 3 more years. They don't need a new patch, or they don't need a Street Fighter 5, because there's so many other fighting games that's coming out that it's I think it's better for those fighting games to just catch up first, because I think Street Fighter and Marvel will always rank as number one and number two games in terms of just stream views, entrant views, and just popularity views.
Hmm. Now, we kind of talked about the biggest jump forward. What are some of the biggest hurdles that the community is yet to clear?
I guess in terms of being mature, because I know a lot of like the fighting game community is very um, rugged and undergroundish, where it doesn't matter what like who's watching, people will just say like the most craziest stuff. Like there was a whole Kotaku article about I think like racism or sexism. I forgot which one it was. So it was because of that, like a lot of the people that commentates have to watch what they have to say instead of what they're actually thinking in their mind.
Sure.
Because a lot of people in the fighting game, when you put them on a mic, they're just gonna just say whatever just comes in their mind first, instead of just like be careful. Because if you look at before Street Fighter 4 and you watch like old school YouTube videos of like Marvel 2 and like Third Strike, like you'll hear the worst stuff you ever hear in your life. But it was okay for the fighting game community just because it's like that arcade environment type of talk. It's like it is kind of like a real talk, but I guess you gotta kind of have to like make it more PG-ish in terms of like things are streamed now, because I think streaming is considered more of a televised thing instead of like it kind of taken over TV at the moment, I think.
Has the past, we mentioned kind of the advent of Twitch and these weekly tournaments that are constantly being streamed. Has that started to kind of facilitate that change? Has it gotten better?
Like well, in the beginning, streaming wasn't like popular for fighting games. They're like, oh yeah, streaming's whatever. The only person that was kind of doing it was Spooky, like Team Spooky, and because of Team Spooky, like he was like, oh, let me stream your event, and let's let whoever can't make it to the event, let's let them watch it and see how it turns out. And it just became something so addicting for everyone to watch, because like, oh, I don't have to travel this tournament to watch like everyone play, so why not? And then more people started streaming, like, oh, I'm gonna stream myself practicing. And because of that, like so many more people are streaming. Like everyone has like their own like streaming tournaments. You have like Level Up, I Play Winner, and you have like the underground ones, like the ones that are like really small, like Offcast and like 8-Way Run, and they're just trying to grow up and get bigger and bigger. And you have like the players, like you have a FGTV house where it's based in Northern California with like Ricky, Filipino Champ, PR Rog, and etc. And they're just streaming every day on like their life and how they approach fighting games like Marvel and Street Fighter and new ones. So streaming is definitely the thing that also kind of helps. So Twitch definitely helped a lot of people in terms of like them staying in the community and also helping the community by like being part of the event and also like helping the event, sponsoring the event.
Now, before we jump on to the next topic, you yourself mentioned that you were going to start streaming. Has that started yet? And if not, when do you really plan to kind of jump into that world?
Okay, so I started streaming back in the day, and I was streaming a good amount, and then I moved, and then I finally got my stream up there, and I'm not gonna name any names, but someone kind of broke my computer, so I recently just got it fixed with the help of two amazing people, and you can thank them, Sumi and Flo, and they helped me set up my XSplit and all this stuff. So because of that, I can stream right now. So maybe today or maybe when I come back from this tournament after this week in Canada, I will stream myself playing some games with everyone. And I will definitely be streaming. So you can follow me on twitch.tv EG_JWong.
There you go. Are you going to be streaming anything other than practices or fighting game scenes? Because Flo is probably, I would say, more famous here on Twitch as kind of the I want to be the guy streamer. I think he recently started playing Super Meat Boy as well. Do you have any interest in playing some of these other games?
Um, I feel like the only type of games I would stream is probably me sucking at League of Legends or me showing Mike Ross that I am a better Dota player
Okay.
after a month or two. But Flo's he's one of those guys that only he can do I want to be the guy or I want to be the Bashi or Super Meat Boy. No one can really replace him. So, all those fraudulent people out there, they should just stop trying
Okay.
to be like him.
Gotcha, gotcha. All right, let's move on and talk about the biggest event in the fighting game community, one that you've mentioned and I've mentioned so many times already, Evo. Now, what is Evo to you? What does it represent, and what does it mean to kind of go and play at that tournament?
Um, Evo, like, I love Evo just because Evo is probably the main reason why I'm successful now because of their tournament. They have like all the players. They get everyone. They get the biggest turnout. It's basically the World Series of poker for fighting games. That's how I always call it. And because of that, because of Evo, I'm always in these amazing clips where I either get comebacked on or I come back on someone else. So it's one of those tournaments where everyone is paying attention. So, this guy might not pay attention to this major tournament, but when it comes to evolution, everyone in the world that's interested in fighting games or just have an interest in watching fighting games will be watching evolution. So because of that, Evo's probably the most important event to me in the world.
What has been your favorite one?
It's kind of hard because like each Evo is kind of like their legend. Each Evo has their moments in legendary, but I guess my favorite one is the one in 2009 where I was in the Street Fighter 4 finals with Daigo, and it was like the closest thing ever. Like it was just like game one goes to him, game one goes to me, back and forth. I reset the bracket, and it goes to the final game. So, and it was like also the really first tournament that has a super crazy turnout. So everyone was getting hype. I know Potato Head AJ, he made a video compilation about the finals. So it's definitely something. If you never seen like that type of if you've never seen that video, you should watch it because you could feel the feelings in terms of everyone that's watching and also the players. So you should watch that. And
And what
I
what
also
Chivo was that? Just so people can look it
two,
up.
Evo 2009.
Okay.
So it's definitely a really strong video in terms of emotions rising and everything. So I think that was my favorite Evo. But I know but an Evo that I want to say that was really good was 2004 with the whole Daigo parry thing.
Hmm.
Even though I was the one that lost in that one, I also feel like that was a very important Evo because that was a year that fighting games were dying at the time. So because of Daigo parrying it, it kind of just like got everyone going back to Evo and wanted to play more because they like, oh my god, that was the coolest thing I ever wanted to do. So everyone started doing that. Everyone started wanting to parry and started just getting better in video games. So it kind of I think it helped from 2004 to 2009. That's what helped the fighting game to stay in there.
That Evo 2004 kind of spawned that probably the most famous clip from competitive gaming in general.
Yeah.
I can't play it here due to copyright issues, but just Google 2004 Evo Daigo. It'll pop up. It's awesome. They even have a crowd shot where everyone just goes ape shit. But can you walk me through your experience of that, kind of being on the receiving end of those parries?
So, you know, I was still, I guess, a beginner. Not a beginner, but basically it was like my first year playing Third Strike competitively. Because I always knew how to play Third Strike, but I just never took it seriously. So I really was trying to like make a name for myself in terms of like Third Strike, because everyone used to call me, "Oh, you're just a Marvel player, Marvel scrub or whatever, right? You can't play real Street Fighter and stuff like that." So I was playing Daigo in 2004, and I was at the part where I'm like about to win one round, not even like the series, the game or whatever,
Right.
and I was like, man, he's not gonna he can't block this because if he blocks it, he dies from chip damage. And I was like, there's no way you could parry this super. There's too many hits because I didn't think like no one knew how to like parry supers like that. Like you can parry like a fireball super, but you can't parry a super that's like past 15 to 17 hits back in the day. So I just threw it out, and he parried the whole thing, and then everyone was going crazy. And the funniest part was the combo he did just barely killed me. So it made like the perfect moment. That was like the perfect moment to do everything right there. And it's just not. It's like because of that, it's just kind of like it's the craziest thing ever. Because look, if it didn't kill me, it would not be that exciting because I could have still won. But since it did kill me, everyone just went nuts.
What was that a huge like kind of emotionally at that stage in the tournament? What was that like for you, kind of recollecting yourself? Because we always hear about these players, at least in the world of StarCraft, where I'm kind of from. After a big loss like that, they'll sit there and refocus inside of the booth. Were you able to refocus after something like that happened, where you immediately really have to start the next round? People are going ape shit behind you. What was your mental state like?
Oh, I don't really get I guess I don't really like get like that in terms of like just breaking down and stuff like that. When that happened, I said, "Good shit, you deserve that. You definitely 100% deserve that." That was 100% like I can't even get mad. You can't even get mad about that. You can't even like just be like, "Oh my God, did he just do that?" Like and just like lose. You're like, I respect that because at the time it's still like I just have that arcade atmosphere, arcade mentality where if something crazy happens like that because he was playing like it was his last 50 cents. Like like who wants to lose? Like this is my
Right.
last 50 cents. So that's how I just took it to take every match as like if someone does anything crazy, I'm like, good shit, run it back. And it was just I think a lot of people are kind of missing that mentality.
Well, I definitely want to say if you have not seen that clip, or even if you haven't watched it in a couple months, go check it out. It's always awesome to watch. Talking about this year's Evo, we kind of already have. Infiltration ended up taking Street Fighter AE 2012, and also taking Street Fighter Cross Tekken with his teammate Laugh. Are the Koreans taking over?
Um, they've been stepping their game up a lot. It's like a lot of people didn't know is like the Koreans' first major win was at this Korean tournament at the Street Fighter LG Cup that was held in Korea where they invited like myself, Mike Ross, Fudo, and Daigo. And Punko won that event, and Daigo got second, and I got third. So it's one of those things where you kind of like see the progression from other countries because I know that Infiltration um from 2010 and he was like decent at the time and he was losing to like Marn easily back in the day but now he stepped his game up. So yeah, he won Evo, and he was really he really wanted it, and you can tell like he's just been putting so much time involved in terms of Street Fighter 4 and Cross Tekken, and I feel like right now the Koreans like well I wouldn't say the Koreans, I would more say like Infiltration and Punko are like the top two dogs, but overall as the country, I think Japan is still number one in terms of Street Fighter because they have more overall players. If there was like a 10v10, Japan would easily beat Korea, and I would think that US would easily come in second just because we have more players overall compared to your two best players.
Mm. Is there any other country, or I guess really to get specific, any other player that hasn't made that big of a name for himself yet, but you consider to be a real heavy contender?
I think one of those players. There's so many of them actually. Like I think in Japan, you probably have I think Bonchan. Like he's a Sagat player. Like he does so well in Japan. Like he always gets like top three. He's one of those guys that like can beat like Daigo like every single game. But when he comes to America, it's just like not easy for him at all. But I just think because like he doesn't understand how people play in America, because the people that play in America are completely different from people who play in Japan. And I also think in let's see, that's in Japan in my opinion, but in Europe, there's a lot of strong players that they don't really get burned just because there's not a lot of European tournaments, so they have to just wait for like those 1 or 2 events of the year to try to come down to and try to prove themselves. So like Ryan Hart, for example, he's like amazing. He's probably like overall the best player in Europe, but not a lot of people kind of like know and how incredible of a player he is in general, unless they played him. But in terms of if you're watching, you're like, oh, he's whatever. He's a generic top player. But there's just top players of those everywhere. Even like people in like Kuwait, the players in Kuwait for Street Fighter, they're amazingly good. So it's just one of those things where it's like a world. It's really like Street Fighter, the actual video game in real life. There's just world fighter. There's just fighters everywhere around the whole world.
All right, let's talk about your Evo this year. You were the favorite to take Street Fighter 4, kind of after the big wins over Daigo and Momochi at CEO. However, you were knocked out pretty early on, kind of in the top, I believe, 32 of the tournament. What happened this year for you?
Well, I think I had the ninth place curse. So I just like one like match away from getting like top 8 and everything. But I think Evo is, like I said, it's like World Series of Poker, and what I mean by that is just like every year in World Series of Poker, you always have like a couple of random guys just making top 8 into the final table. And I think Street Fighter is one of those things where you don't know which top player will make top 8, and it's just kind of hard because there's like a lot of people in top 8 that you would think would make top 8 but didn't make it at all, just because like the competition in Street Fighter 4 is humongous. Like in American like major tournaments, like you have like CEO and like East Coast Throwdown, Season Beatings, Canada Cup, and etc. Those are just like majors, but they're not like the World Series of Poker. So you can kind of predict on who will make like top 3 at a Street Fighter 4 major in terms of like those events. But Evo is one of those events that you definitely don't think, because a lot of people would like, suspect that every year people will always say, oh yeah, it's going to be Justin Wong versus Daigo in the finals of Street Fighter 4. Like in 2010, I didn't make the finals at all. And 2011, Daigo or me didn't make the finals. So it's definitely one of those things to where Street Fighter has evolved in terms of like it's any top player's game.
Did you have to refocus after that event, or did you kind of just shake it off and move on to the next one? Like, was it that crushing of a defeat?
I mean, I think is the only tournament that I kind of just get depressed at if I don't win or I don't do good in, because it's those events that's like Evo's once a year. Like if I lose one major, there's probably a major like 2 weeks later that you can just like make it up. But Evo is like you literally have to wait another 365 days to try to play in this tournament again. And because of that, everyone's thinking the same thing, and they're working really hard to just like want to improve for next year Evo. So like I practiced a lot for this year's Evo, but I came down short. So I'm pretty sure a lot of other people had done the same thing, and everyone's probably back on the grind of like, all right, we're gonna attend all these majors and practice really hard for next year's Evo, and then everyone's gonna keep doing it, so forth and so forth. So Evo's definitely one of the super important, just because I don't really get depressed at tournaments, but Evo gets me depressed, and it's really I'm so antisocial when it comes to if I lose at Evo. It's like I don't want to talk to anyone. I want to go home. I'm gonna go hermit up, put a blanket over my head, and just like not talk to anyone.
Fish Sticks actually brings up a good point here in the chat. Could something like an Evo West, Southeast, North, or East, West, Southeast Grand Finals be a thing? Do you think they could break it up, or would that kind of kill the prestige that Evo has, kind of as this one big event every year?
Evo used to have Evo East, West, South, and stuff like that, but to be honest, it's just a regular tournament because yeah, it has the Evo name branded, but it doesn't. It's not like not everyone in the world will attend the qualifiers and stuff like that. But because there's a main event Evo, it's an open tournament, everyone will go to that one because that's what everyone knows as. But like you have a lot of events that are branded as Evo in terms of Evo qualifiers. Like you had Season Beatings Evo qualifiers, you had Winter Brawl Evo qualifiers, Final Round Evo qualifiers, but it's just always the same top players that always go to that event. Like you won't have someone from Europe or Kuwait or a massive 15-man army from Japan to go to these qualifiers. But when it comes to just the EVO Grand Finals,
Yeah.
everyone will just come out in general.
Let's see here. One last question about Evo. You know, everyone watches the stream, but the people that go to Evo enjoy Evo the most, I think, because of the stuff that happens kind of late night. Do you have any good stories that have occurred kind of late night that aren't out there in the public, or I guess that you can
Oh,
talk about?
like all right. Well, I have a good one. So in season beatings 2010. So a lot of people, for some reason, a lot of people think that me and Daigo are not friends, or they're like, oh, they're enemies. That's why they have to play each other in finals and tournaments. But it's really not like that. A lot of the fighting game players are super friendly. But this one year in 2010 is that he was hungry, and I'm not from Ohio or anything, so I was trying to get him some food. So we go to this drive-through, and like we have no car, so we try to like try to talk to them from like not in the car, and they called the cops. So we almost got arrested. Like and me and him were in the finals for the next day too. So it would have been really funny if we really did get arrested and just like not showed up to the tournament. But a lot of crazy stuff always happens at late night. But to be honest, recently I haven't been involved with that just because I just want to just get some sleep and focus on the next day so I could play good in the tournament.
Gotcha, gotcha. All right, guys. Well, we're pretty much wrapping up here. I do want to say for the subscribers watching right now, go ahead and start firing off questions there in the chat, and we'll be pulling those once I get my final questions in. Dead or Alive 5, Tekken Tag Tournament 2, and many other fighting games have come out recently. Do you think any of them have what it takes to become the next big fighting game?
It's really hard at the moment, but since DOA 5 and Tekken Tag 2 are like two new fighting games that are like currently still being played by everyone and also finding out new technology and stuff like that, it depends on the community and how they kind of just like take it. I know that Namco and like Team Ninja, they've been really positive about attending grassroots tournaments and just like helping those tournaments, like maybe put like a pop bonus or just being there and showing some support. So that because of that, it helps a lot. And you'll see you have like those players being very loyal to their company. So it's definitely still up there to see if it will become the next big fighting game or not. But I also feel like if the current, like, I guess, fighting game players that are famous, if they kind of like support it too, those games, it has a better chance of being like popular in the next big fighting game. But it also depends on how the community takes it overall.
You've been around the scene probably longer than most. I believe Valle retired this year, right?
No, he definitely did not retire.
Okay, okay. Maybe I think I read that somewhere and it's just a giant troll. But regardless, is retirement ever something that you've thought about? Is it in the next 5, 10 years, or are you just going to keep competing forever?
I mean, I think reactions is something that's super important to have as a player, and I know that reactions kind of just like slowly die down once you get older and stuff, but I feel like I still have amazing reactions, and just because of that, I don't think I will retire anytime soon. Like if Alex Valle, he's like almost 50 maybe. No, just kidding. He's probably like 34, and if he's still playing and still placing, like then anyone else at that age can still do it too.
What do you want your legacy to be, kind of when it's all said and done?
Mm, well, right now I guess I'm still a player, and a lot of people say that I'm like a living legend or stuff like that. But I just love the fighting game community overall, just because it just brought me to places that not a lot of people will ever have a chance in their life to do. And I would always just be here, even if I don't play anymore. I would help organize tournaments, maybe. Basically the things that Alex Valle is doing at the moment, because he's basically the Southern California ambassador in terms of like helping players level up their games and just like how to get better and just putting people names out there. So it's definitely one of those things that I could see myself just taking like that step too.
Mm. And finally, the last question I have, define success, then using that as the definition of success, do you find yourself to be successful at this day and age?
Um, I think I'm still at the point of being successful, but I have not been completely successful, but it's still I think a work in progress just because there's so much things to do, and I guess since I'm very strict, it's really hard for me to accept that I am being successful or not. It's just that I want to, I guess, keep progressing forward and trying to reach that plateau where, I don't want to be stuck on this point. I want to go higher and higher. So I guess I could see myself saying that I'm on the progress of being successful.
All right. Well, we do have a couple of community questions here from Imity777. What is your favorite non-fighting game right now?
My favorite non-fighting game?
If you had a night just to kick back and not play a fighting game, what would it be?
Okay, let's see. My favorite non-fighting game of all time is Magical Drop 3.
Right.
But at the moment, it's probably League of Legends just because a lot of my friends play it, and I just like playing games with friends. Like I don't like playing by myself. Like playing a RPG is like the cool thing to do back in the day, but everyone plays like if they want to play RPG, they'll just play like World of Warcraft just because you can interact with other people. And I think a lot of games like Borderlands 2 is the same example, or Torchlight 2. So I rather prefer like games where I can like play with my friends and just like take it casually instead of taking it seriously.
From Pingu242, Justin, do you think it is good for the fighting game industry to be spread across multiple games, or would you like to see one game win and all the top players practice and play only one game and have all the competition of the entire community in one game?
I personally like the fighting game industry to be spread across multiple games just because if you grew up in an arcade, you always have a quarter up on this game and then you put multiple quarters up in other games, so you could just like go back and forth every time after you finish a game or you lost. So I like that, but I think that if it was just one fighting game and everyone's just focused on that, I think it would be kind of boring just because like fighting games are like super fast in terms of like rounds and stuff. Like imagine you only had a Street Fighter 4 tournament and that's the only tournament, then the day would be so like short for everyone. But because there's multiple fighting games, you have like a whole day of like footage of content just to watch and just like enjoy. So like most tournaments are like 2 days now. You have a pool of days with just pools and the finals day for Sunday. And if there's no multiple games, then it's going to be like a 30-minute final, and then that's it. That's the end of your day.
It's true. It's a good point. From Fishsticks, he says, Justin, what do you think it will take to get the FGC Plus Stream Monsters to support a fighter in an esports event? DreamHack and MLG have tried with little or no support for the general American Asian FGC, even DreamHack, which had top EU Asian players playing AE. What will it take?
It's one of those things that's really hard, and I feel like the community, if the community can support it, and obviously everyone has all the top players are being very supportive in terms of like events at like DreamHack and MLG, and it's just like one of those things that's kind of hard just because of the mentality of like the old school mentality that the fighting game community has been there for like the past 2 decades, and it's just like they've been working by themselves, so they kind of just don't want to be, I think, overtaken just because like if you have a major event like a DreamHack and MLG and it's on the same weekend as a grassroots event, then a lot of top players will go to the major event just because of the prize pool, and the grassroots event will just kind of have like a lesser turnout because I think because of these events like let's say CEO season beatings and stuff like that, I think the top players that attend it kind of like gets more helps the event get more entrances in general. So it's just one of those events where if it's not on the same weekend as a grassroots event, I think it will be respected more. But a lot of people don't understand that, like I said, DreamHack and MLG are not just a fighting game event. It's more of an overall multi-genre event, so they kind of have to be worried about the other communities that's part of the event also.
Noir wants to know why so much hate for Persona 4 Arena.
Well, I don't hate Persona 4 Arena. Like, I play it a little bit, but not really good at it. But it's just, I guess, a lot of people just don't like giving games chances if you're not Street Fighter or Marvel. But it's just one of those games where, you just kind of, like, if you like it, then you like it. Then you don't need, like, 100 more players to play it or whatever. If you enjoy a game, you just enjoy a game. Like, I enjoy Cross Tekken, but the player base on that one is super small, so
Right.
it's not like I'm gonna not stop playing it or whatever. It's just one of those games I enjoy playing.
And I think our final question here from the chat, Nmaster64. What are your thoughts on the continued push towards online games and away from local multiplayer? Is the arcade scene that bred so many fighting game players gone forever? Great question.
Well, I think that since everyone knows that the arcade scene is kind of like diminishing, and it's really hard for arcades to open, like Super Arcade and Arcade UFO, and they're trying their best, and it just helps a lot of people that don't have access to other players. Like, if you're from Missouri, you're not gonna have a good arcade for anyone, so you have to focus on online games. And I think because online games is available, it helps a lot of players. Like, you have Wolfcrone, like he's like an online player. I don't think he was from the arcade scene back in the day, and he's one of the top Street Fighter 4 players in the nation at the moment. So because of that, it just kind of just helps like everyone just grow as a whole. And I also think that online games also helps more entrants in tournaments, because everyone thinks they're good, so they want to see if they can do it offline.
Okay. Finally, one last question. Fishstick says, what country/team do you think is your favorite to win Canada Cup this year?
The finals for Canada Cup will be USA 1 versus USA 2. That will be the finals, and everyone can hold that shit.
All right, Justin. Well, that is it for Real Talk. Thank you so much for coming on, man. Is there any shout-outs you want to do? Any sponsors you want to send some love to?
Shout-outs to you for having me on the show. And shoutouts to Evil Geniuses, of course, for just helping me overall and just getting my name out there, and also sending me to events, and just making my dreams come true. And shoutouts to Evil Geniuses sponsors, as you can see on the shirt: Steel Series, Intel, Monster, Raid Call, Kingston, and Win, and a lot of etc. You can check them out on myeg.net. And shoutouts to everyone in the fighting game community that's just here and still involved with the tournament scenes, and just shouts to everyone.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much once again. Do have some final words here for the fighting game community. If you guys are watching this and you enjoyed kind of the interview with Justin, let me know. I'd love to kind of jump into some of your other big names in the scene. But if you guys don't enjoy this stuff, then also let me know how I can improve it. Check out YouTube and Twitter for more updates. We'll be doing kind of a calendar now on YouTube that I have content coming out each day of the week. Later tonight I'll be streaming Dishonored here on Twitch. And also, just for people that watch this, let me know what you guys kind of play, if you guys actually do play fighting games, because I'm always curious to know. I think a lot of people play fighting games kind of in the closet, so to speak, because they don't want to be known to be so shitty at these games starting out. So let me know what games you guys play here in the comments. Justin, that's going to do it. Thank you once again for coming on, man.
Yeah, man, no problem.
All right, we'll see you guys later. JP McDaniel signing out. This has been Real Talk.